Okay, so what I have here is I have Windows 10. I've got my Kali build according to the instructions online on VMware Workstation. I've got Firefox up and running here, and I'm just pointed it to my localhost / down vulnerable web app minus master. Before doing that, I have ensured that I've got Apache running, I've got MySQL running, and we're interested in SQL injection. So I'm just going to security, make sure that's setting it low. On SQL injection, one of the things that I'm asking you to do is to build a statement that returns all of the records in the table and execute that statement. So I've got a statement. It's being built here through this web app, and I can actually navigate my way there. You can see that my URL is down vulnerable web app -master /vulnerabilities /SQLi. I actually have, if I can just navigate to it, I actually have the source files open here. I can list those. I can see my security setting is low, so I'm using low.php. If I have a quick look at that PHP file, I can see where my database query, my SQL query is being made. So I'm selecting first name and last name from users where user ID is equal to ID. So all I need to do here is enter in a valid ID, and 0 is not a valid ID, 1 to 5 is, I believe 6 is not. I don't get anything returned. So I have 5 users apparently in my table. I'd like to be able to return all of those in one lot, which means that what I'd like is to get some statement here where my ID is going to match all of the user IDs. Of course I can't do things like 1 to 5 because that doesn't make very much sense. It only returns 1 here. What I can do is inject some SQL. My first bit of SQL that I'm going to inject is going to be a single quote. And my single quote is then going to quote off this user ID here. So I'm not actually entering in a user ID. What I want to enter in is OR 1 equals 1. And by entering 1 equals 1, that means I'm going to match against every single row in the database. So I'm not matching on the user ID anymore, I'm matching on every single row with OR 1 equals 1 if I submit that. Bear in mind I don't put the end quote because I have an end quote here and a semicolon here which will finish off my SQL query correctly. I then get back the users in the database. So that's task 1. I then talk about getting information about the database itself before moving on to extracting information from tables that exist in the database. We can find information on the database by actually by using the union command and union command in order to extract the exact same numbers of variables that this query should be returning. So my query is expecting first name and last name, so I have 2 variables that should be returned. So I can technically just go, I don't need to put 1 or 1 there. I'm then going to execute a union select. I'm going to execute a union, and I'm going to select a few things here. I'm going to select database. This isn't the exact code that I've got in the notes, just to show you that there are other ways of doing this. I then have 2 variables that I want to return, the database name and the username. I then have a semicolon to finish off my query. I then comment out this single quote and this colon here, and that will return to me the database, and it will also return to me the user. So that's quite useful. We can do exactly the same thing if I go union select. My question is asking you to find the version of the database, and I can do that like this. So I'm extracting the user, I'm also extracting the version. I can see, right, the user I already know, but now I've got the version of the database that is currently running here. I then talk through a few commands that enable you to get access to information on the tables this database contains. Based on looking at the information in the tables, we're interested in what users are available in this database, and then we're going to extract the username and the password from the database. So all of these are really quite powerful things. The passwords are all going to be, well, presumably some hash value of the password that you can then go through the process of cracking. In order to do this, I'm just going to make my box a little bit bigger so you can see the commands that I'm executing. So I'm going to go to inspect element and I'm going to make that 105. Actually, I'm not going to make that 105, I'm going to make that 75, that's a little bit too big. That's a slightly better size. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do, again, this isn't the exact command that I've got in the notes, but just to show you that you can make up, as long as it's valid SQL, you can make it whatever you like. I would like to select the table names that exist in this database. Now I need two variables, because if I don't have two variables, then my command isn't going to be executed correctly. An example of that, when I was selecting, if I select purely the version rather than having two variables, so if I did that as a part of my previous, it would come back and say I have a different number of columns, my number of variables isn't correct, so I do need to make sure the number of variables are correct. I could do that by saying null and then just selecting the version. That would be fine. So that comes back with the version of the database. So I see that I can use null in order to match my SQL query against one of the variables that is expected to be returned. So let me build my command to extract all of the tables. Having just completely messed all that up, let's go back here and have my large input window. So I want to union, and I want to select two variables. Let's start off with null. I want to select all of the table names. So this is the standard from my information schema dot tables, and that should then give me all of the table names that exist. So I've got my users. Well, we already know that users exist because we're using it here, even though you wouldn't actually be able to see the PHP code. Also see I've got a table with guestbook, and I have some standard SQL tables as well that one would find normally existing. So that's interesting. Well, what I'm interested to do now is to extract perhaps if there exists in the table users columns that might contain user information, and so what I want to do is I want to extract all of the columns from the table users. So I've now identified this table here. I want to go and extract the columns. So again, I want union select null. I then want this information I want to extract, and I'm going to extract the column name now. From, again, I'm going to use my information schema. Dot columns, where the table name is equal to, open quotes, users. So let's just check that's correct. I have one variable that's being returned here. I have another variable which is a column name which is being returned from the information schema.column, so the columns of this table where my table name is equal to users. Let's see if that's going to return something. Yes, it does. It returns the fact that I have user ID, first name, last name, I have users, I have passwords here, I have avatars, I have last login, I have failed logins. So now that I'm able to union this information, it may be that I want to extract, of course I want to extract usernames and passwords. So let me go back to my large input box. Again, I'm going to union select null, and now I'm going to concatenate as if it were one variable. User, I'm going to, oh, hang on a second, I need a 0 there. And password. I just need to enter in some valid SQL here from users hash. So again, my hash is commenting out this single quote and this semicolon here. I just enter in whatever SQL I want to be executed. I'm now able to extract a username, and I'm able to extract probably what appears to be an MD5 hash here. I can then go through the process of using something called John the Ripper in order to crack all of those passwords. Okay, that's it. I'll do another video on using SQL map now.